Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome to the conversation stream for another week. I am joined this time around by someone that I have followed on Twitter for a while, but this is actually the first time we've ever gotten together to actually have a conversation. So I'm really happy to welcome Rico Baker from the YouTube channel Rico Rants, and you can also read him on Medium and follow him on Twitter. And the links to all of that are in the description. But Rico, my friend, how are you? Thanks for coming.
I'm fucking peachy, dude, and it's a pleasure to be. Am I allowed to swear? I forgot to ask you
You
that.
can no you please go you,
All
hey,
right.
we believe in free speech on this channel. Go ahead,
Hey,
you can
and I
start.
know monetization is a whole thing. I know that's how that,
No, we're all right, yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
I'm glad you're here, man. So before we get started into what we're actually going to spend most of the hour talking about, one of the things that I always like to do for these shows is to encourage people who watch to donate to a charity or a worthy cause. And you have chosen a cause that is near and dear to your heart, which is your local chapter of Habitat for Humanity. So why don't you talk for a minute or two about why that's important to you and why people should support Habitat for Humanity?
It's a pleasure. And yeah, no, I'm on the neighborhood revitalization committee, which is a part of the my local Habitat for Humanity, my county's Habitat for Humanity, and the goal is, as it sounds, is revitalize the neighborhoods. Particularly, we're our focus area right now is the lowest income neighborhoods in our county, and which are by and large predominantly black and just non-white in general and whatnot. And our goal is to buy lots to build new houses, refurbish houses that are already there, beautify the neighborhood to make it more to improve the quality of life of the people there. We do literacy programs. Um, they say job training or resource as well as resource guides to getting people employed. Um, and beautification of the neighborhood, because the goal is to not just improve the quality of life of the people already there, but to bring more people to those neighborhoods, to make those
Mhm.
places more appealing to businesses and people to want to come live there. Because a lot of the struggles with these lower income neighborhoods is that most of the higher income earners, or most just the quantity of people, are gone. Like they left.
Yeah.
That's what ends up happening. So we're trying to bring people back to these neighborhoods, and that works in tandem with our housing homeless veterans project, where we sought out the homeless veterans in our county, in the local area, and we're working with them, the religious community services that provide shelter to those homeless veterans, and working in tandem with them with our also building buying lots and building houses for that those are lower income neighborhoods. So effectively transition them from homeless at a religious community services shelter to being housed, employed, yada yada yada, over in these lower income neighborhoods. So it's just one big old project with a whole bunch of moving parts, but that's what we're doing.
And I mean, you could not imagine a better cause. Unfortunately, it's very, very needed. And, I mean, and I know like I live in Western Maryland, so I wasn't familiar with the Craven County, North Carolina chapter of Habitat for Humanity, but Habitat also does a lot of work in my area as well. And, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better organization.
Honestly.
Yeah. So anybody watching, if you want to donate to the Craven County Habitat for Humanity, the address is on your screen right now. The link is in the description of the video, and I know we would both really, really encourage you to donate and to support that very, very worthy cause. Um,
If you're going to donate, just want to
yeah,
say this here, make sure
please.
you notate that it is for the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee or the NR committee, or just say it's for Rico. They'll know.
Okay.
I'm a part of the committee, so they'll know.
Then
And if somebody asked me before, like, which do you click on, is you click on general donations, just a general donation.
okay, and then do you indicate that like in the comment box at the
Yeah.
bottom? Okay,
In the
yeah,
comment box, you say for the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee, or
there
NR
you go.
committee, or for Rico.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so there you go. You heard it, everybody. Put for Rico or for Neighborhood Revitalization Committee in the comment box if you're going to donate. So now that we've got the nice life affirming part out of the way, Let's talk about this. So
Fair.
I fair. So okay, here's what this reminds me of. First of all, I'm going to ask you to for people who don't know, for people who are lucky and haven't and don't know what fair is yet. Um, it's fair is an acronym. It stands for Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, which sounds good.
Sounds
Okay,
great.
sounds like, hey, I can get behind that. And then but then you notice like who the people are that are kind of involved in it, and you realize, oh shit, this is like a Patriot Act situation where they gave it a name that sounds like you couldn't possibly be against it. And then you learn
Yeah.
more about it and you're like, oh
It's
shit, no.
actually absolutely fucking terrible.
Yeah. So what is fair, and how did you come to be involved in researching it and writing about it?
I was just dicking around on Twitter like the rest of us terminally online folks,
Right.
and I saw Barry Weiss advertising it, set up like, hey, bringing together this organization called FAIR, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. And again, seeing Barry Weiss being the one coming out against it was already a gigantic crimson red flag.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and again, and I typically don't care because there ain't no shortage of fucking people like this doing stuff like that. But when I saw that they were invoking the image of Martin Luther King and quoting that one goddamn passage from the "I Have a Dream" speech in the March on Washington,
Yeah.
that one singular quote is when it pushed me over the edge, because I've seen that quote every year.
Like it's the only thing he ever said.
It's like the only thing he ever said, and it's always quoted by all the people who are the reason it needed to be said in the first fucking place.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So this was just, I guess, the thing that pushed me over the edge, because again, I've seen numerous people do this throughout the years. Like Mitch McConnell fucking quoted him. I'm just like, Mitch McConnell quoting Martin Luther King. Are you kidding me? So it's like this for me was just a compounded, I've had enough. And if any, I'm not about to let these fucking charlatans invoke his image to cloak their anti-racist bullshit.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, because people do that all the time. Like it seems like every year, especially like for Black History Month or for Martin Luther King Day, like you always get people who are like completely the opposite of anything that King would have supported,
Absolutely.
quoting him and invoking him, and calling. They usually phrase it in some way that makes it sound like he just wanted people to love each other and get along, and like he didn't have any specific opinions about anything. He didn't have any specific proposals for how to solve any of these problems. He was just a nice guy who wanted people to love each other. It's like, Jesus, you have no idea what you're even talking about here.
No
But
clue.
yeah,
Not a
but these guys are especially brazen about it. I mean,
they are so shameless in their weaponizing, like you said, their cherry picking of that one quote. These are all people who are just they're so shameless about it. I'm honestly surprised Candace Owens isn't a part of this fucking thing. And like I'm being honest with you, I don't know how is she not here?
Give it time. Give it time. Now that you mention it, I'm kind of surprised.
I'm sure she will endorse this group in due time. I see an endorsement of them in the near future.
So I like I told you before we went on the air, I've been going through their website, and before we get to the board of advisors, because the board of advisors is like the first sort of introduction that I had to it, because I think you said you saw Barry Weiss talking about it. I saw somebody retweet or have like a screen cap of Michael Shermer tweeting it, and I thought, oh, Michael Shermer's involved. Okay. I know that's a shit show.
That you already know.
Yeah, it's like because really, I mean, Barry Weiss is a red flag. Practically every face on that board of advisors page is a red flag. Where you're like, oh shit, if they're involved, I know it's not good. But so you go to the FAIR website and you go to their about page, and again, just looking at what it says, if you take it at face value and you don't really think about it too much.
Yeah,
it sounds okay, it sounds pretty good. They say it says what we stand for, and they say we defend civil liberties and rights guaranteed to each individual, including freedom of speech and expression, equal protection under the law, and the right to personal privacy. That sounds
Yeah,
good. That sounds
yeah,
pretty good, right? You
yep.
know, and then when you go down a little bit further, but then it starts to get kind of iffy because you start to think, wait a minute, I wonder what they mean by that, because they say we support respectful disagreement. Ooh, you hear that a lot.
Yeah,
And
and
then they,
another red flag is like at the start of their
yeah,
about page, and again,
yeah,
you have to be well versed in reading between the lines and knowing
oh yeah,
the context surrounding these talking points, because this is a very they're being real cheeky here, but I know what they're saying. I know this is the same shit that conservatives for the longest time have been saying about colleges and the media and everything. And honestly, if you really wanted to go a whole step farther, you could go into more Nazi conspiracy theories in the way of
hmm,
describing cultural Marxism taking over the media, government,
yeah,
schools, and all that to indoctrinate our youth into an intolerant and a cynical and intolerant orthodoxy. But that's being maximum uncharitable. But even the more charitable interpretation, if you know who these guys are, you know what they're actually saying. Like right here with this
exactly.
quote here: increasingly, American institutions, colleges and universities, businesses, government, the media, and even our children's schools are enforcing a cynical and intolerant orthodoxy. This and that right there is already to me and anybody else who knows these guys know what they're about, already a huge red flag.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because what are they referring to? What is this cynical and intolerant orthodoxy they're referring to? It's teaching about America's, for example, very racist past. There's
Yeah,
being teaching even a little bit about it, teaching about being even a little bit anti-racist. Like it's just teaching a more accurate history on America is to them teaching a cynical and intolerant orthodoxy. It's what inspired the 1776 project and all that
oh
nonsense.
yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's
Well, because it's like yeah, when you know what they're talking about.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because like you would, because when if you read that quote and you think like, and you're like, and you're not familiar with who these people are, you don't know what the game is yet. You might think
yeah.
like, oh, cynical, intolerant orthodoxy. Well, maybe they're
That
talking
sounds
about,
bad.
yeah. It's like maybe they're talking about like when cops like shut down Black Lives Matter protests, or when trans people
Yeah, that's
are
how they
getting
get
put,
you.
and then it's like, and then you read a little bit more into it, and you're like, oh no, they never talk about that shit, do they? They mean like
Yeah,
they mean like the estate of Dr. Seuss choosing not to publish some of his books anymore.
yeah,
They mean people not getting invited to colleges for speaking gigs. Like
yeah.
that's
That's
what
what they're
pisses them
referring.
off.
That's literally that is what these people are referring to. Literally,
Yeah.
that's what they're referring to. They're not talking about the actual injustices that are actually still happening, like that of segregation, of how segregation is still a thing. Our schools are still heavily segregated.
Yeah.
Our housing and so on and so forth. All of that is still here, but they're not talking about any of that. That's not what they're talking about when they refer
No.
to cynical and intolerant orthodoxy.
No, there are state legislatures throughout this country right now, primarily in the South, but all in states beyond the South as well, that are introducing bills to make it harder for people to vote, that in voter suppression measures that, as they always do, will primarily affect people of color and
Yep.
other marginalized people.
Yep.
And I guarantee you, none of the people on
Not
this advisory
not
board are going to say a word about that.
in my research of them, nary a goddamn one. I'm making sure to add that in the article once it's done.
Yeah.
But I've made a note of that. None of it, because I looked up each of them and looked up if they had anything to say about these sweeping voter suppression laws that our Republican Party is going all in on passing throughout the country, in the states where they have even a slim majority, like in Georgia and all that, where
Mhm.
they're passing laws to make it so you can't provide any kind of food or water or chairs to voters waiting in lines.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Basically, effectively, specifically targeting Black communities and whatnot. Nary a goddamn one of these people have anything to say about that. Not one of them. But they will happily tell you racism isn't that bad. And black people are exaggerating about racism and all these things. They will happily say that. But you
Yeah.
will not find any one of them, not one, speaking about what's actually happening right now.
No, and nor will they open their mouth when you know, like under the Trump administration. It looks like Biden is going to reverse a lot of this. Hopefully, he'll
Yeah,
reverse all of it. But you know, that when like you mentioned the 1776 project, and when the Trump administration would release, you know, new guidelines for the Department of Education that basically said, don't teach people about Black history,
yeah.
don't teach people about LGBTQ history,
Yep.
don't spend too much time on
Because
slavery,
that's
you
not
know.
patriotic. That's not patriotic history.
Yeah, that's not suppression of free speech. The government literally telling teachers, don't
What to
teach,
teach?
yeah,
Don't teach these things.
don't teach kids about this shit that actually happened.
Yeah,
That's
no,
okay.
no. They were all. Most of these folks were okay with that. They were in support of it. Well, one of the more larger advocates of that type of stuff, who they for some reason didn't add into the group. Who I'm sure is probably because of the whole anti-Semitism thing he's been doing. The James Lindsay, they didn't add
Oh yeah,
him into this group, which he absolutely belongs in this fucking uh gaggle of dipshits. You know what
yeah,
I
he
mean?
fits right in. Yeah,
He fits right in, but I guess he went a little too far with the whole blaming anti-Semitism on Jews. Like it's their own fault for the anti-Semitism.
yeah.
So guess he went a little too far for their taste.
Yeah. I said they're smart enough to, you know.
He know
Well,
he's bad for the brand.
he's bad for the brain. We'll have accused rapist Michael Shermer on the board, but not you, James.
We'll have defender of Jeffrey Epstein, Steven Pinker on the
Oh
board, but not
God.
you, James.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah.
You,
So,
yeah,
but yeah. So let's talk about some of the people on this advisory board, because you go to the board of advisors page, and like we were talking before we went on the air, I said it's like a yearbook page from a high school, where it's like a high school for assholes. I mean,
yeah,
it's just almost every person on it. Some of them are names I don't recognize,
yeah,
but every name I do recognize is like, oh God, that guy or
yeah.
that girl,
That
or it's like
guy.
they're terrible. They're awful people. So I mean, the top of the list, the first picture on the page is Ayan Hirsi Ali, who
Yeah,
I know well from the atheist community.
yeah.
Because she was a darling of the atheist community for many years, and still is in certain circles. But
Because she is like very very like extremely anti-Muslim, like
oh God,
extremely
yes,
extremely xenophobic and anti-Muslim, and she put and that's her whole shtick, being the Muslim who's against Muslims. You know what I mean? Or the reformed Muslims. So I guess she's atheist now,
yeah,
who's just like violently against Muslims, just hate the just Muslim, like pushing the idea that Muslims are coming to rape and kill people in Western civilization and all that. That's her whole shtick. And I want to say that to everybody in the audience here. You will find that's all of these people, all the women and non-white people here. That's their whole fucking shtick. Is the black people here? Their whole thing is saying no, racism isn't that bad. That's
yeah,
their whole thing. The women here, sexism and misogyny and sexual assault, all these things aren't that bad, are not that common. You know what I mean? Like all of them, each one of these people, their whole shtick is downplaying things that is prevalent, real. It is still an issue to this day. That's their whole thing. Like I could literally summarize all of them with doing that.
yeah. They're all like the message is always, and it's like, it's conservatism is what it is.
Yeah,
They probably wouldn't want to call themselves conservative. They would insist, oh no, we have a lot of ideological diversity in the group, but it's the same conservative talking point that they've been pushing for my whole life,
yeah.
which is don't worry about it. All when black folks complain about racism, nah, it's not really a problem, don't worry about it. When
Not
LGBTQ folks complain about the oppression that they have to deal with, nah, it's not that big of a deal, they're
yeah.
exaggerating, don't worry about it. That's the message, that's always the
Women,
message.
like, you know what I mean? and Ina, you had her on your show before.
Yeah.
She does a great short little summary thread of each of these people. And it's great. Just to break down, I have it here right here, like Melissa Chin, who's a part of it, and her whole thing was basically downplaying the Me Too movement, trying to is just being dismissive of the Me Too movement. You know what I mean, about women's case. You know, coming out, speaking out again about sexual harassment and assault that many women have unfortunately dealt with for a very long fucking time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you got Coleman Hughes. His whole, again, he is the epitome of racism isn't actually that bad. You know what I mean? You know, reparations is bad. Racism isn't that bad. Everyone's exaggerating. You know what I mean? And it's just,
yeah.
And that is really all of their shtick. That's their thing, each of them.
Yeah. Fucking Megyn Kelly. For God's sake.
She worked at Fox News for years, and that was her whole thing, was downplaying everything.
Remember, I mean, if you remember her for anything in particular from the last few years, and I mean, you people who follow this stuff remember her for a lot of terrible stuff, but you know, one of the things that kind of got some traction from her relatively in the last 3 or 4 years was she said that she responded to a story or a suggestion about a black Santa Claus by saying, Santa Claus is white. Santa Claus, the imaginary person, is white. Like as if it was a fact, as if she was talking about a real person. And like anyone who conceives of Santa as being of a non-white race for whatever reason, because, you know, they want to tell their kids a story or whatever. Like, nope, sorry, you're wrong. Santa's objectively white.
Hey,
okay.
growing up, my mom always called her. She said she was Mama Claus. You know what I mean? We grew up single parent home, and she was the one giving the gifts. She didn't even pretend there was a Santa. She was like, "I'm Santa. If you got Mama Claus, I'm giving the gifts." You know what I mean? But
yeah,
we could, and that's what I want to talk about more, because like this could easily just be, you know, just venting and talking shit about these guys,
right?
But I really want to articulate what's so insidious about them and what inspired me to write about them in the first place.
Yeah, please.
Because like I said this before, the very dangerous thing about them is not just the Weasley way they try to shield what they're actually doing with almost unobjectionable statements about opposing intolerance and racism. You know what I mean? And invoking Martin Luther King's image in that one quote from the I Have a Dream speech about I have a dream that my 4 little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That quote, everybody loves quoting that fucking thing. And these guys, like I said, particularly pissed me off seeing them do it. And I went back through that speech, you know?
Yeah.
And like I said in my article, I break down the speech, basically going down the points that none of that are issues that are still prevalent to this day, that none of these people bother to speak on or you know, complain about at all. They have nothing to say about it. But here's one particularly poignant thing that goes back into what we were talking about before, about the voter suppression. One passage from that speech was, "We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote, and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote." That was earlier in that speech, and that's absolutely fucking right. That isn't it. We were just talking about the voter suppression law. Like voter suppression has always been targeted towards poor, but particularly, like especially non-white communities, making it as hard for Black people, non-white people, marginalized people to vote as humanly fucking possible. That has always been the case. And again, none of these people have anything to say about that, to be clear. And I was going to say, I want to make sure to point that out. None of them, they love that one part about the judge's content of the character rather than color and skin, but they have nothing to say about this part. Yeah. Among other things in the speech, they have nothing to say about this. And that is stuff like that. It's like, so these motherfuckers have the gall to invoke his image and that one part of his speech while ignoring everything else to push their anti-racist bullshit. It's just, like I said, it pushed me over the edge. You know what I mean? Because No, again, if any of them bother to read the full speech, they'd hate that speech. If
Yeah.
any of them bother to read more about Martin Luther King, they'd hate Martin Luther King. But they don't. But they have no problem cherry picking that one part and ignoring literally everything else and plastering his image over their bullshit movement. That's what was so insidious about it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they've made him in the decades since his death. They've made him not just that. I mean, our culture in general has made King into a very mainstream figure, which in one sense is good. But the problem with that is, in making him mainstream, we have sanded away a lot of what at the time made him so radical. Like he wasn't just a guy who got up in front of people and said, "Let's all get along and love each other."
Oh.
He was demanding change, and he was demanding it in a peaceful, nonviolent way. He
Ooh,
wasn't as radical as a lot of other people, but he demanded change. He was like, you know, we can't fix things by just saying, "Oh, let's all be colorblind and get along."
Kumbaya and all that. The Kumbaya Martin Luther King, the version that they've got is one that will never cease to amaze me. But I have this is all of these people hate Black Lives Matter or have come out against Black Lives Matter in some way or another. Especially with regards to the riots that broke out as a result, which again, the majority of them was the fault of law enforcement being a super aggressive and instigating the riots. But that's beside the point of what I'm about to get to here in their invocation of Martin Luther King. One thing, and I should have kept it because I already cited it in my article. Actually, let me just pull up the article and then I'll be able to just easily find the link to that. But here's the short version, basically. A lot of people like to try to say, especially these type of people, will like to try to say that Martin Luther King would have been like absolutely opposed to like Black Lives Matter or against the riots that have happened, against like the riots in Ferguson and Baltimore and the riots that resulted during Black Lives Matter protests. Again, that were initially peaceful and all that. Until you actually read what Martin Luther King has had to say about riots. If you actually read what Martin Luther King had to say about riots, I can promise you they would hate him. They would hate him. Let me find it right here. Yeah, because Martin Luther King spoke about, you know, he would talk about how, you know, he was obviously he was opposed to the violence, but he didn't speak it in the way we do here. As in the way we just try to pretend like the people are just being violent for no fucking reason.
Right.
Martin Luther King would break down why these things happen and offer substantive critiques as to what needs to be done to prevent them. But most of all, again, the thing of note that I promise you that if any of them bothered to actually read, they'd hate him for him saying this. He brought up the point that the riots that happen are the fault of white people, of a white society that push Black people to the edge, to the point that they would feel the need to riot, that they would do these things in the first place. Let me say, if I can find it, what he basically how he said it, because they say that it sounds a lot more aggressive. But it's pretty close to the way how he said it. Let me just see if I can find it. All right, here's one of the. I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. This is from the Other America speech at Stanford University that he made. It's like he said, I think America must see that the riots did not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promise of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that the large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And in a real sense of our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention.
Yep.
But if you look at how any one of these people of fair talk about Black Lives Matter and the riots that have occurred and whatnot, you would think these people are just rioting because they're just dumb animals acting with no justification whatsoever. They have no reason. There is nothing that built up to it. These are just people acting a damn fool because they feel like it. Yeah. If you look at the way he talks about them versus how they talk about them, you will see a distinct difference.
Yeah, you can tell a lot about someone by where their sympathies lie, and when you actually read what King wrote and said about riots, it's he without condoning violence, he says, look, our sympathies should be with the people who are taking part in these protests, because they're not doing this for no reason. And maybe you can say, like, well, the property damage and the violence and everything, like, we should want to avoid that, but it's they're not out there doing it for nothing. And if you really care about this, and you're not just showing off, then you should care about the things that push them out there into the street in the first place. A lot of times the people that like the people we're talking about, people who some of these actual people on the Fair Advisory Board, and also people who are sort of like-minded and have said similar things, they like to say, well, I have no problem with protests. I want there to be peaceful protests.
Want them to be peaceful.
And then when there's peaceful protests, they have a problem with that. And they say, oh, well, it's peaceful, but they were blocking traffic. What if an ambulance has to get through there?
Martin Luther King has something to say about that too. Because it's the same shit, these same shit arguments. He noted that non-violence was treated no differently than violence, and thus was, he said, there is probably no way, even eliminating violence, for Negroes to obtain their rights without upsetting the equanimity of white folks. All too many of them demand tranquility when they mean inequality. Nonviolent action in the South was effective because any form of social movement by Negroes upset the status quo. When Negroes merely marched in the Southern streets, it was close to rebellion. That's what it was treated like.
Yep.
Even when people do things peacefully, the right way, it's still the wrong way. If you look during the summers of the George Floyd protests, again, even like you even got John Oliver on the last week tonight.
Yeah,
like among so many other people, showed that peaceful protests were met with extreme violence from local law enforcement, from state and local law enforcement. Just peaceful protests. People were getting tear gas to hell and brutalized. White and black people, everybody.
Yeah,
and that's always been the case. But these people at Fair will have you believe that's not the case. That if they just protested right, there wouldn't be no problems. There wouldn't be no problem. If they just did things the right way, there wouldn't be no problem at all. But every time and again, even almost 50, what was it? This is in the 60s, so what, like about 60
coming up on 60
ago,
years, yeah.
Coming up on 60 years ago, the same problems persisted. We're having the same problems almost a century later, the same exact problems. And yet these people, these intellectuals, these academics, these people who we should trust who purport themselves to be a foundation against intolerance and racism, have no interest whatsoever. None of them have any interest whatsoever in reckoning with that, in acknowledging any of that, the litany of evidence and the mountain of evidence that shows why this shit keeps happening.
Yeah, no, it's the thing is that, and I love how a lot of these people, they and some of them are legit intellectuals. One of the people on this board is John McWhorter, who 15 years ago seemed like a pretty sharp dude, And then he's one of those guys that just has gradually sort of, it's like his brain has just been rotting in public. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, John McWhorter used to write books about language and, you know, about philosophy of language and evolution of language. And he's a really sharp, really interesting, smart guy. And now he's one of these, you know, guys that is just, you know, he's so concerned about political correctness and woke culture and cancel
Yep.
culture. And it's like, Jesus, dude, what happened to you? Like, you know,
He
you
got
used,
sucked in. He got sucked into that same culture war bullshit.
yeah, exactly.
His mind melted by the culture war.
Exactly. But they all have, they have these pretensions to being intellectual, and yet none of them seem to be aware or interested in discussing the ways in which these problems have mutated. Because I mean, it's the same, yeah, the same basic problems exist today as they existed in King's day. They're not exactly the same in all the details. We have passed a few laws to make things better in certain ways, but the problems just mutated, and they affect people's lives in slightly different ways than they did back then. You know, so it's no, you know, you can't have like, you can't just come out and say we're going to have a poll tax, we're going to have literacy tests, we're, you know, we're going to do this and that. They have to find more creative ways
Yeah.
to stop black folks from voting, but they're still doing it, you
And
know.
just a side note, guess who? Look who decided to join me in my little stream. It's my baby boy here. If I can show you.
Oh, hey, kitty.
Yeah, he decided to take a little seat right here in front of my stuff here. Look at that.
No,
He's joining me for the seat. He's getting all cozy.
that's awesome.
Baby boy. Oh, all right. Hold on. My microphone seems to have changed. Let me select microphone, line to audio. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Like for a second,
you're
it looked
good.
like my microphone had changed. My baby boy. But yes, you know what I mean? It's all of the and that's my issue with these guys, is that none of them have any interest in actually addressing the material conditions that resulted in these movements, that again some resulting in riots and other, that resulted in the Me Too movement, that resulted in Black Lives Matter movement. None of them have any interest in addressing these things. Their whole thing is downplaying the reasons why these people are out there. Even if the people themselves out there marching can't articulate why in the same way that, say, you or I can, to which these people are all too happy to cherry pick, it's the point remains the same. Because, like, again, segregation is still here. And then we've talked about this, like, even not just the more explicit conservative racism and racism of the Republican Party deliberately trying to suppress the vote of Black people. It's also liberal racism. You know, the performative wokeness of liberals who love them some Black Lives Matter, but, you know, y'all can't come live in our neighborhoods. You know what I mean? You know, like, because the most segregated places in this country, surprise, surprise, is the North, the cities.
Yeah.
You know, the liberal bastions are the most segregated places in this country. But again, if any of them were to address that, I believe they were sincere in their concern, in their foundation being against intolerance and racism. But that's not the case at all. None of them are interested in that. Not one.
No, they're interested in. Yeah, go ahead.
I said no. They're interested in the culture war, and actually joining alongside conservatives and shutting down any and all teaching of the history of America's actually history of racism and bigotry, and the America from the perspective of all the oppressed, marginalized groups throughout this country's history. That's what they're interested in.
Yeah, and a lot of them are also interested in sort of perpetuating this kind of warm, fuzzy concept of American history, you know, where it's like, where they'll pay lip service to stuff, You know what I mean? Like they'll mention, oh yeah, racism and slavery. Of course, oh, slavery was terrible. Of course,
Of
nobody.
course we're opposed to that. Of course, of
Exactly.
course we're opposed to that.
Yeah. Oh, slavery was terrible. Oh, it was all those years when women couldn't vote. Oh, that was awful. It's I mean, like they pay lip service to it, but they also it's like they want to act like it didn't matter. Like they try
Or
to.
wasn't that bad,
It
or
wasn't
the
that
effects
bad.
of those things are gone. It's over. Like it's over. Slavery's over. Second, Jim Crow is over. It's all over. So what are these people upset about? And it's like I've had to say this time and again. The laws may have changed, but the racism didn't go away.
Yep.
The people, when the Civil Rights Act got passed, the racist white people at the time didn't just suddenly be like, "Oh, all right, black people, y'all can move in our neighborhoods now, come to
Exactly.
our schools. We are no longer racist. The law is changed. So we are no longer going to do anything whatsoever to effectively continue our racist practices. We don't know words. We are done." That's not what happened.
No, not at all. I mean, well, Donald Trump was sued by the federal government for housing discrimination in the late 70s.
Yeah.
The Civil Rights Act and the major pieces of legislation that outlawed housing discrimination on the basis of race had been passed in the 60s. It was super illegal when he did it. He
Yep.
still did it because he figured he was going to get away with it. And that the same thing happens today all the time. It doesn't matter.
Yes, it's still a thing.
Yeah.
Redlining and all that, it's
Yeah.
still a thing.
Exactly. It doesn't matter that it's illegal. People do it anyway. They find sneaky ways to do it legally.
Yes,
So
we still have we literally have evidence of what is fucking people called in the housing market, people who sell the houses and all that. I forgot the name of the top of my head. Like just brain fart on that one. The point is, the people who sell houses, we have evidence of them deliberately redirecting. It's like they have a white client. They're like, hey, let's get you over here in these white neighborhoods. You have the black client, let's get you over here to black neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Effectively still continuing the practice of redlining and segregation. Only selling certain houses to the black clients, and vice versa. Same with the white clients. Just like keeping people still separate, keeping people still segregated effectively.
Yeah.
You know
I saw a story just recently, and I just saw it recently. It may well be an older story, but about I think it was a black couple that were selling their house, and they got the house appraised, and the appraisal value seemed like really low. And so then they got some white friends of theirs.
Yep, I know the one you're talking about.
To pose as the homeowner, and they got an appraisal from another outfit, and it was like the significantly higher. It was like the typical market value for a house like that. So I mean, how else do you explain that other than racism? Whether it's intentional or unconscious bias, at a certain point, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's the same house.
Yeah, and again, and going back to fair. If any of these people ever actually addressed any of that, I wouldn't have a problem with them. I'd be like, hell yeah, fair. There we go. But that's not what they're here for. And that's what I intend, to articulate in my article. And I want for everybody to see. Anyone who looks up fair, I want this kind of counter narrative available for people to see, for people to so they don't get duped into any well-meaning white folk interested in being better anti-racist and better against intolerance of racism, that they don't find these fucking ghouls leading them in all the wrong direction. It's just no. If any of them ever talked about these things, I would have no problem with them, but they don't. In fact, they do the fucking opposite. Which leads me to the next thing, because we focused on Martin Luther King. The other person they quoted was Frederick Douglass.
Yeah.
And specifically Frederick Douglass on the matter of Frederick Douglass is basically a free speech absolutist. And if anyone knows me, see me on Twitter or YouTube or not, for a fact, I know I'm not a free speech absolutist. Hell, my pinned tweet is mocking free speech absolutists. The thing is, and obviously I can't talk to Frederick Douglass to get a more nuanced take from him, but I think the context surrounding his free speech absolutism is vastly different compared to these guys here in this day and age. Because in his day, when he was advocating for free speech and the freedom of assembly, people were trying to kill him for speaking out against slavery.
Yeah.
He was an abolitionist against slavery. He was trying to speak out against slavery and was attacked, and him and other abolitionists were attacked and killed for it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the context surrounding that versus, I don't get to speak on this campus to talk about race and IQ. What? You know what I mean? It's vastly different. You know what I mean? But the invocation of people like Frederick Douglass and Frederick Douglass speak is to try to make it seem like it's no different, that they share the same plight, and Frederick Douglass is the type of person they're on the same side when these people are absolutely the fuck not.
No. And I mean, Frederick Douglass is he gets, you know, a lot of similar treatment as Martin Luther King, where the people will quote Frederick Douglass, you know, talking about like human dignity or, you know, the importance of freedom, and they'll sort of divorce him from his specific context. And you know,
they will never quote his speech. No. What is the Fourth of July to the Negro? They will never quote that. Never.
No, that one, and also a personal favorite of mine is it's the op-ed he wrote after the death of Robert E. Lee. That is just amazing and predicts a lot of, not just predictions. I mean, it was already happening in his lifetime. People were already trying to rehabilitate Lee, you know, back then. And Lee only lived about 5 years after the Civil War, and even then, like with the Civil War, still it literally had just happened, and
they were already trying to retcon him,
trying to retcon General Lee, and Frederick Douglass was like, guys, like this, it just happened. Like he just led an army to defend the institution of slavery. It just happened. What are we doing here?
Oh my God.
You know. And I mean, he was not, and he was also, for his time, was a radical. He encouraged people. He told people, make noise, agitate, protest, take to the streets.
All of these people at Fair would hate.
Yes,
every last one of them. That's why, like, I've seen it said before a long time ago, and I'm like, if you are opposing Black Lives Matter, you'd have opposed the Civil Rights Movement, you'd have opposed Frederick, the abolitionist movement, you'd have opposed all of them. You absolutely, I mean, even again in their day, just Martin Luther King, I have images, and I'm going to put it in articles for y'all to see it.
Yeah.
The people saying the same thing they're saying about Black Lives Matter protests now, but like, hey, basically accusing them of, you know, they're not doing this for any justified reason, and stop being so violent, yada, yada, yada. You know, that they're the ones instigating all the violence and causing all the violence, when again, it's the brutal law enforcement. Because as King has noted time and again, is that peaceful protests were treated the exact same as any kind of violence. They were met with the same brutality, and it was treated as an act of war.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's the same talking points, the same fucking talking points. Oh, and now, because even said we go back to abolition, that's all about how many years ago? About like 100 years ago or so. Well over 100 years ago. I got the dates all mixed up in my head. But in Frederick Douglass's day,
150.
150. The talking points are still the same.
Yep. And there's nothing that Black Lives Matter protesters today are asking for that is fundamentally different than civil rights protesters have ever asked for. It's just that the specific issues are a little different. But I mean, and it's like, and you know, one of the things that I sort of realized, or it was an insight that I eventually got to about not just civil rights protests, but any protest from any group of people that suffered a kind of oppression that I don't suffer because of who I am. I don't, you know, because I'm a privileged person in pretty much every way you can be privileged, that it's really not my business to tell people how to protest. You know, they're not asking me. They're not, and they don't need my permission. And it's not for me to say like, well, and if Black Lives Matter wants to protest against, you know, police violence or something, like, I just wish they would do it this way instead of that way. That's not my call to make. You know, and I mean, I can have my private opinions about it, but it's not for me. Nobody's fucking asking me my opinion. It doesn't affect me. You know, if I want to support them, I should support them instead of saying, well, gee, I'd sure like to support them, but, you know, if only they wouldn't do this and this and this, you know, especially when, like you've said a couple times, they're not even the vast majority of Black Lives Matter protesters are
Are
doing
peaceful.
absolutely nothing wrong, or peaceful,
Yeah.
and the violence is instigated by the authorities, not
Yep.
by them.
Like literally all like every time.
Yeah.
Every time again, and it's not just against Black Lives Matter. Like I said, if you just look back to the summer after George Floyd's death, of the protest that consisted of lots of fucking people, like very diverse group of people. I saw white people getting their fucking eyeballs blown out too.
Yeah.
They were all like, everybody's like, what the like media getting specifically targeted by law enforcement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they seeing like, and I mean mainstream media outlets, not just random independent media, mainstream media outlets, people just getting arrested because they were deliberately targeted by law enforcement. Though, you know what I mean? It's the evidence is it's a mountain of it. It's a genuine mountain of it. Like you have to you have to try not to see it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet these people who's again created this foundation against intolerance and racism, you will not find them addressing any of that. You will
No.
not. You won't. You will not find Barry Weiss. You will not find not even John McWhorter. No, you won't. You will not find any of them calling a spade a spade. Their beef. The reason for this foundation, they're here to fight against cancel culture. They're
Yep.
here to fight against. They're here to fight the culture war. That's it. They're here to fight against the anti-racist activists. They are opposed to Black Lives Matter. They're opposed to the 1619 Project. They're
Yep.
opposed to the more accurate telling of America's history. They are opposed to it.
And I think a lot of it, with some of them, maybe even most of them, I think it's a lot of it is that, you know, their heads are just genuinely that far up their own asses.
Yeah.
But with a lot of them, I also think there is a degree of cynical calculation to what they're doing, because they know that what they call cancel culture, you know, what they call wokeness or political correctness run amok or whatever. Because when I was a kid, it was political correctness, and now
Yeah.
it's woke. You know, people are
Yeah.
so, and you know, whatever they call it, they're against it because they're afraid that it's going to fuck with their money.
Oh
They're
yeah.
afraid that it's gonna they're gonna get canceled, and then, oh shit, what am I going to do then? Like, there's a very cynical, selfish bit to it, where if they lose their foothold in mainstream culture, you know, like, if, well, what's Megyn Kelly going to do if nobody will put her on TV anymore? Is she going to have to? Hopefully she saved all of her fucking millions of dollars that she got. I mean, NBC paid her I don't know how many millions of dollars to basically get lost. So I don't think she'll have to work. You know, but I mean,
Whoa,
like, I think that's what a lot of it is. They're protecting their spot.
woe is the multi-millionaire Megyn Kelly.
Yeah, I
Oh,
know.
whoa, her contract was ended early, and she got like a well over $5 million payout from the
Yeah.
contract ending early. Woe is her.
Yeah, she's the free speech champion that you want. The person who got paid to go home. She was so awful. NBC paid her to go
They
home.
paid her to go home. Paid her more money than most of us are ever going to see in
Ever
our
gonna make.
lifetimes.
Yeah.
Ever.
Ever. Yeah.
It's and that's what kills me. You
Yeah.
know. Oh, fuck! Did you anything else specific? Because I had like one more thing, but if you
No, go for it. I was just going to say, you do your one more thing, but I just want to tell people who are watching, if you're in the live chat with us and you have questions or something, go ahead and start throwing them in, because we're in the last 10 minutes. So if y'all want to throw up questions for us to talk about, go ahead. So, but yeah, go ahead and do your last thing.
yeah, I got any
Yeah.
questions for me or just questions at all? Well,
Yeah.
definitely asking. But yeah, no, it's like I said, it's all being treated in the same way like political correctness was being treated. It's all being cynically weaponized and repurposed to just protect themselves and their bottom line. They don't actually give a fuck about freedom of speech or any such thing like that. You know, they don't care. They care about their bottom line and care about them not that there not being any consequences for what they say. They feel entitled to whatever platform that they have, and that's really all there is to it. But lastly, what I want to talk about is like wokeness. Like I just because now I have an audience, I tell y'all the same thing I have to tell everybody, because it seems like woke just means whatever. Cancel culture and woke just means whatever the fuck anybody wants it to mean.
Right.
Wokeness, we're all woke. Literally, its origin definition is just plain and simple awareness to societal injustice, particularly to racism. That's it. And societal what constitutes as injustice obviously varies on the person as to what you find your own personal morals as to what you find as being unjust or just. But that's wokeness, is just awareness of societal injustice. Obviously, there's the more popularized meaning is wokeness is just being being feminist and or anti-racist and or just being opposed to bigotry in all its forms is the more popularized way it's treated. And so these people who've made their entire business model as being aggressively opposed to wokeness, I'm like, so that's what it is. They're opposed to the people opposed to the various forms of bigotry that still exist in society today, from classism to racism to xenophobia to sexism and misogyny, so on and so forth. They're opposed to those people who are opposed to those things. Yep. And it's fucking infuriating. So if anyone who's curious about the group, if anyone's like any schools watching this who see them show up or whatever, and you see this video, don't trust a goddamn thing they have to say. They are not, no,
they're not reliable messengers at all. So we have a question from the Progressive American who says, what do you think historians should do to help accurately portray previous Black activists' movements?
Well, it would really help to what a lot of people do is what's the word I'm looking for? Interview people. You know what I mean? Black activists and Black communities, like actually talk to people. You know what I mean? Don't pull the Selena Zito thing where they just kind of have this stock rugged red American in a fucking in a bar or whatever, when they never actually, who was actually a consultant for the Republican Party the whole time. Right. You know what I mean? Right. No, just like actually come to like do what I'm doing with me and the Habitat for Humanity, our neighborhood revitalization community, and actually being in these neighborhoods and talking to these people. If you want a more accurate telling, is talk to not just the current generation of Black activists, but also the past generation, the older generation. Actually get their input on what's happened, on their perspective with these things. You know what I mean? And corroborate that obviously with existing evidence as to what happened around the same time. That's what That's what historians who try to actually get an accurate picture of what happened do. I mean, that's the best we can do is compare and contrast with what we got, find whatever commonalities we can, and then go from there.
Yeah. And I would also just suggest, try to encourage diversity among historians, because even though, as you can see from the board of advisors page on FAIR, not all Black historians or Black academics are not, just because an academic is a person of color, it doesn't automatically mean that they're not going to be a dipshit. But and that by the same token, there's no reason why a white historian necessarily has to be a person with his head up his ass. But broader diversity would really help.
I'll put it to you like this on that. Like basically, I will take the word over a white historian over that of Candace Owens. You know what I mean?
Right, because she has a track record where okay,
she has a track record of spreading misinformation and lies about American history and the Black community versus say a white historian with you know what I mean. So your identity does not automatically mean that you are a safe bet to talk to and you are a credible character and a good faith actor on these issues. You say Candace Owens is a Black woman. That does not mean she has anything worth a damn to say about Black people and or women and so on and so forth.
Right. And yeah, and that's been demonstrated
That
again
has
and
been
again and
demonstrated
again.
time and time and again.
Yeah. Here's a question on a completely different subject from ER Mixon's Craziest Theories, who says, question, do you watch Star Trek? And if so, what is your favorite Star Trek?
Live long and prosper, homeboy. But to your answer, no, I don't watch Star Trek. I literally just know that from a long time ago, and I've always thought that was cool. But other than that, I've never watched a Star Trek. I don't know what a Star Trek is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Again, I'm also fucking with you. I've seen the more modern movies, and I thought, it was Hollywood schlock, but it was okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I've never been interested in Star Trek or Star Wars, any of that.
You don't start. Just stay free, man. Don't get pulled in. Beautifulest one asks, is the point to convince white supremacists and their supporters the correctness of your views, or is the point to actually coalesce with those interested in social justice?
Yeah, the point is to coalesce with those interested in social justice. Look, de-radicalization is important and necessary, but it really can only be done by, close people who actually have a more close relationship with them. You know what I mean? Because it takes a significantly more personal touch to de-radicalize someone. Because let's take, for example, Daryl Davis, who's a part of the board, the advisory board of FAIR.
Yeah.
He's literally known for quote unquote, basically befriending the KKK, but he didn't actually de-radicalize them. All he did was convince them that he was one of the good ones. Because what you'll find is that one of the KKK members with whom he's good friends with, that KKK member who tried to rebrand the KKK, shot a black person during the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally. He was a part of that. Called him the N-word and shot a dude. He was a part of the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like he didn't de-radicalize them. He didn't get the KKK to stop being the KKK and change their mind. No, all he did was convince them that he's one of the good ones, and that's it. So he failed at de-radicalizing them. The best you can do, I say, is to work on everyone else who's not a part of those movements.
Mm-hmm.
Work on everyone else. I have had much better ground gained with just people who are just your bog standard fucking conservative and a Republican than I would ever have with the fucking KKK. Like you don't become a part of the KKK unless you are balls deep in that bullshit, in that fucking white supremacist bullshit. I'd rather deal with your bog standard Republican and conservative than someone KKK. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I know, because I live in Western Maryland, which is a very super rural, super white area, and there's KKK activity like in the region, right? I remember I have a very vivid memory of being like a kid and walking outside one morning to get the local paper at my house where I grew up, and there was like a flyer, like a recruitment flyer for the KKK.
Yeah, there's a fucking recruitment choir for Patriot Front here in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But and I remember that, and it's always been like that. There's always been like sort of on the fringe. There's been like people who know people, who are in the KKK, but the broader point is there's also a lot of just garden variety racist white people around here. Most of them think the KKK are a bunch of assholes.
Gone. They don't even think they some of them think they don't even think they exist anymore, or some just a bunch of assholes.
Yeah. So you're right. There is, like, if someone has decided to actually join a group, whether it's some neo-Nazi group or some Christian identity group or the KKK or whatever, that puts them at even a level above just your garden variety racist white person. So I mean, I agree with you. I think
don't waste your time on the people who have joined those movements. Leave that to the authorities to separate them from them, and then whoever the fuck else who tries to de-radicalize them, or at least keep them on a tight leash with regards to their activities with these groups and whatnot. You know what I mean? But you have a much better chance of de-radicalizing your bog standard racist Republican or conservative and whatnot, who just who is much less committed to those views. They just hold them, but they're not really, really attached to them. That's just all they've ever known. You know what I mean? But again, that more or less, that's the people that can do that are, again, close family, friends, people who have a more personal relationship with them who can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Last question, and then we'll wrap up. This is from Dana, who says, "What are effective strategies for ordinary folks, people who are white but not rich or socially significant, to support meaningful change?"
The best way to do that, I mean, you just kind of, if you can't support them, find and support movements like Black Lives Matter or the more nonpartisan movements. Like, again, the habit in my neighborhood revitalization committee, like it's a nonpartisan organization, but our thing is to help, these predominant the lower income neighborhoods, which again, predominantly Black neighborhoods. So, support stuff like that. Like, it doesn't even have to be explicitly partisan or explicitly coded, racially coded. You know what I mean? You just kind of have to try to support either monetarily or get out there and help yourself. Positive actions to helping people. Like I say, like if you have a local Habitat for Humanity, like fucking join them. I highly recommend them. The Habitat for Humanity is about helping people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or your local homeless shelter or food bank or whatever. Like, there's always something you can do.
Yeah, and if you can do it locally, that is usually your best bet. Yeah,
it's a good quote I'll never forget. It was like, think globally, but help locally. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember how it specifically goes, but that's basically like, be aware of the broader issues, but your focus should be local.
Right. So before we go, when you finish this article, where can we read it?
It's gonna be on my. I write on for Medium. You know what I mean? You just look me up on Medium as Rico Baker. The D. Fucking spell it in the chat so y'all can see that shit too. my name is. You just find Rico Baker or Rico Baker. It's pronounced Rico, but Rico Baker on Medium. You'll find. I've already written several articles up to this point. On like what the Democratic Party did wrong on the 2020 election, on how it never had to, about when the COVID hit back in March. I wrote about how it never had to be this way, like things never had to get this bad, and a couple other things. But that's what I do. I'm just a freelance writer, and I just write because I like fucking writing. And sometimes I feel like if I'm feeling passionate about it, I'll write about it, whatever the issue is.
Yeah, and Dorico's Medium is linked in the description of the video as well. So check that out. Keep an eye out for the article, and when you publish it, I'll add it to the description when the article is up, and I'll retweet it and stuff. So hopefully everybody who watches will get to read the article when it's out. Thank you so much for joining me, my friend. This was great.
Hey, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like I told you before. And like I said to Ina when I had her on, because she does similar sort of work. I'm glad that you are doing this so that I don't have to just digging into this mountain of just assholes and disingenuous.
It's so many.
Yeah. So I'm an atheist, so I say this figuratively, but you're doing the Lord's work.
Yeah. Oh, and before we go, I saw a lot of questions. I'm just rapid fire some of these little.
Go for it.
These little questions here. So let's see. Because I saw a bunch of quick little questions I could answer. But let's see here. Where is it? Someone had asked. Where is it? Who's a furry boy? I ain't a fucking furry. Get out of here. Motherfuckers. Oh boy. All right, where is it? Are you an imposter from Among Us? Yes, if I'm an imposter, I love being an imposter. I love tricking people. It's really fun. Like I say, I don't watch Star Trek. Where's the other one? Do I play Dungeons and Dragons? I've done some tabletop RPGs, and personally, like I said, I love RPGs in general. I've played RPGs from JRPGs, just regular RPGs my whole life. I've always loved them, and I've done some stuff like actual D&D sessions with well, a few buddies of mine, Zal
Mhm.
Rock Chaos. You'll find, and whatnot. He runs a thing. It's really, I don't know if you ever see him, but I had a lot of fun. I played um a what was I was like a cowboy. I had a gun. My revolver was a holy gun. I was a healer, but I had a gun. So I healed you by shooting you, and I
It's
defeated you.
faster that way.
Yeah, it's faster
Yeah.
that way. And let's see here. Any other questions? Da, 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 da. Oh, and to the progressive American, yes, you can cite my article once it's out into your work. I'm perfectly happy with that. And that should be about all of that.
All right. Absolutely. So yeah, thanks once again. And thanks to everybody for watching and for asking questions and for hanging in there with us. It's and again, when the article is out, I'll make sure to share it around. And God, thank you for writing it and for doing all the research so that there's like a resource for other people to think
It
about,
is
and
such a slog.
yeah,
It's like, because these
I can
people
imagine.
suck. Like I said, I told you
They do.
before, I enjoy reading about Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, and Abraham Lincoln, but these guys fucking suck, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just makes the more you see how they're misrepresenting them,
It just
you
makes me
know,
angrier and angrier.
yeah. All right, man. Thanks for joining me. Thanks to everybody else for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Y'all have a great night.